Hey everyone, welcome to my new tutorial. Today I want to show you how to model and animate a sci-fi themed vehicle and export it for game engine from Blender, including the animations, and I really hope you will enjoy this one, and if you do, please don't forget to leave that like, and if you're new around here, hit that subscribe. Now let's jump into Blender, and first of all we'll build a simple sci-fi tank design. So I will just select everything here in the scene, press X and choose the lead, and let's press Shift A and we'll start with a plane. And now let's scale this up, so I'll tab into the edit mode, press S then Y and scale it to around 5 or 6 meters, something like this. And now let's press E to extrude and push this up. Now let's press S then Y and scale it on Y axis, and then E again to extrude, and then S then Y again to scale this back down, like this. Now let's tab out and let's hold Shift and right click here, and let's press Shift A and we'll add another plane. Now tab into the edit mode and let's press S to scale this down like this, and press G then X and move it to the side here. And let's press S then Y and scale on Y axis. Those will be the tracks or the track covers or fenders or whatever you want to call them. So let's do something like this. I will scale this up a little bit more still. And now let's look from the side by pressing 3 on a numpad. Let's press G then Z, move this down like this, and let's press E to extrude and then E to extrude again. We can go a little bit higher here, and now I'll toggle the X-ray here, press S then Y and scale it like this to maintain this angle approximately, something like this. And now I will go ahead and create tracks. Now these won't be any like rigged or moving tracks, because from a top-down view you wouldn't see this moving in any way. So let's just press 3 for face select, select this face right here, press I to inset, and now we'll just press E to extrude this down, and then S then Y to scale it like this. And now let's go for edge select right here, alt click this loop, and we'll press V to separate this and right click to release it in place. I want to have this as a separate mesh so the transition is sharp there. And now let's select these two edges right here, press Ctrl B and create the bevel, and let's increase number of cuts to, let's say, 3, something like this. So this is the suggestion that there are in fact tracks underneath. And now let's select these two edges on top by holding Shift and press Ctrl B to bevel those as well. And I think 3 cuts will work here as well. And now we can tab out and let's go to the modifiers panel and let's add mirror modifier right here, and let's use the eyedropper tool to pick this object as a center for mirroring. And we have now those on both sides, and I like that there is a little bit of a gap here. So let me just look from the top by pressing 7 on a numpad and then press Alt D then Y and duplicate this to the other side like this. If you just started Blender and you have trouble following all the tutorials, make sure to check out my courses, where in addition to the step-by-step instructions, you also get full in-depth explanation of all the steps and all the tools, and you get to learn everything from simple low poly design all the way to full character illustration, textured environments, even a little bit of sculpting and hard surface modeling. So if you're interested, please check out the link in the description. And now we'll create a turret, so let's select this object right here, tab into the edit mode, and with this top face selected. If it's not, let's go to face select and select it, hold Shift S and snap cursor to select it, and now we can tab out and let's press Shift A and we can add a plane and press G then Z and move this up a little bit so it goes above the tracks. And now tab into the edit mode and let's press S to scale this up a little bit like this. And now let's press Ctrl R and create a cut right here in the middle. Left click and right click to confirm, and now select this edge, press X and delete vertices, and let's go ahead and add mirror modifier here as well and enable clipping, and let's press 1 for vertex select, or you can click right here, select this one, press Ctrl B then V to enable vertex bevel and reduce number of cuts with the mouse wheel, and let's do something like this. And now we can select this one, press G twice to slide this back like this. And now let's do the same vertex bevel right there. Okay, now let's press A and E to extrude. And now let's select these two vertices on top. Let's hold Shift S, snap cursor to select it. And let's go ahead and switch our pivot point to 3D cursor. And now let's select these other and press S and scale them inside like this. So we maintain those nice flat faces there, and we can press G then Y and move this back a little bit like this. Okay, I really like that. Let's press 3 for face select, select this one, press I to inset, and now press B to enable boundary mode, and it will ignore the one on the inside. And let's press E then Y and just scale this down. We'll put some cannons in there. So we can now tab out. Let's hold Shift S and snap cursor to select it, and let's press Shift A and we'll add a plane. Now let's press G then Y, move it right here, and then from the side view let's press G then Z and move it around here. Now tab into the edit mode and let's switch back to medium point and press S to scale this down right here. And we can go even further like this, you will see why. And let's press 2 for edge select, select this one, press G then Y and just extrude like this. And now if we enable X-ray view, we can hold Shift, select this one on the other side, press X and delete only edges. So now we're left with these two edges and we can convert them to curves. So tab out, right click and convert to curve. And now in the curve settings, geometry section, we can reduce the resolution and increase the depth, and we'll create two cannons like this. Now let's toggle the X-ray back again. And additionally, we can tab in and press S then X to scale these together a little bit like this, and then play with the depth. I think something like this might work. Tab out and let's right click and convert to mesh. Now we'll tab back into the edit mode, press L hovering over one of those, press X and delete vertices, and we'll go ahead and add mirror modifier. So again, we don't need to repeat all of the steps on both cannons. And now let's press Ctrl R to create a loop cut and slide it back here. Now let's press 3 for face select, alt click this loop, and let's press Alt E and extrude along normals. And let's do something like this here. And here in the front, let's press 2 for edge select, alt click this, press E then Y and extrude, and then F to fill. So I think this will work nicely for a base cannon shape. Now if you enable X-ray view, you can select all of this and press G then Y and move it back and forth a little bit and adjust the proportions. So now let's tab out and let's toggle the X-ray. I want to create some small details here and there. So here on the top, let's select the turret and let's tap into the edit mode, select this edge, hold Shift S and snap cursor to select it, and tab out and let's press Shift A and let's add a circle and modify this to 12 vertices, should be enough. Now tab into the edit mode and press S to scale this down. Now press 1 for vertex select, press E then Z and extrude like this, and then press F to fill, I to inset, and again E to extrude. Then we'll press Y to separate, scale this down, E to extrude, and finally enable X-ray view, switch to face select and select this bottom face right here, press X and delete it. We don't need that down there, and let's toggle the X-ray back. And finally we can tab out, select this turret once again, tab into the edit mode, and let's just go ahead, go for the edge select, select these edges by holding Shift. Let's press P and separate the selection into a new object. I will now tab out, select the new object, tab into the edit mode, and now we can press A, then E, Z to extrude on Z axis like this. And now that's extruded, let's first check our face orientation, and we have some flip normals here. So we can press A and Shift N to recalculate, and then press Alt S and scale this inside, and additionally press S for even scaling to achieve something like this, and then Alt E and extrude along normals to do something like this, and again press S for even scaling to do something like this. Now press 3 for face select, enable X-ray view, and down there alt click this bottom loop, press X and delete those faces, toggle the X-ray back, and now we'll press A to select all and Shift N to recalculate normals. And now let's tab out, let's select this one here and do the same thing, so select all and Shift N to recalculate. And now what I'll do is to just select everything, hold Shift, select the body. First of all, right click and convert to mesh. That will apply all of the modifiers, even the mirror modifier, and then press Ctrl J to join. So what you should have here is one single object, one single mesh with all of these separated pieces inside if you tab into the edit mode, and no modifiers right there. And now we can go ahead and add the bevel modifier, increase the segments, and in the geometry section switch this to arc, and in the shading enable harden normals. And let's disable clamp overlap, so we allow for some distortion. And now let's go back on the amount until most of these disappear, like this. And now right click, shade smooth, and we'll fix these by separating the parts of the mesh. So if you go into the edit mode and enable X-ray view, you can press 2 for edge select or click here. Let's hold Alt key and select this loop on the Canon, hold Alt and Shift and select another one, and right here as well, and here. And now we'll press V to separate this and right click to release. And now if you toggle the X-ray, you will see this is no longer connected, so the bevel modifier doesn't kick in there, so we can tab out. And one more thing I want to do here is to increase the angle, because you can see the bevel modifier is catching some of the angles on the Canons. So let's do something like 50 degrees, and this should work nicely here. So this is like a super basic low poly stylized tank model, but it's good enough to try and animate this and export as an animated FBX for game engines. So let's hold Shift S, snap cursor to world origin, and we'll go ahead and add an armature. So press Shift A, go armature, and let's do single bone. And now this is not visible, so let's go to the armature settings, and here in the viewport display we'll enable in front, so it's always visible. Doesn't matter if you're in the X-ray or not. And let's look from the side by pressing 3 on an numpad. And first of all, let's select our tank, press G then Z, and move this up so it sits on the axis there. And now press Ctrl A and apply location. And now we'll select the bone again, tab into the edit mode. And let's press A to select all, and then R and 90 to rotate 90 degrees. And let's hit minus to rotate to the other direction and confirm with enter. And we'll just move this lower. So press G then Z, move this here. Now press Shift D, then Z to duplicate this and move it right here. Now let's do another one. So press Shift D, then Z and move it right here. And then again, press Shift D, then Y and move one of these here. Okay. Now let's look from the top by pressing 7 on a numpad and press G, then X and move this bone right there. This will work as a Canon, like this. And now we'll just name these. So select the one on the bottom, go into the bone settings and name this tracks. Now let's select this one. This will be the body. Here we'll have a turret. And this one will be Canon.L, and you will see why just in a second. So now let's select this one, hold Shift, select the bottom one, press Ctrl P and parent with keep offset. Now let's do the same thing here. So select the turret bone, hold Shift, select this one, press Ctrl P and parent with offset. And finally, same thing right here. So we are basically creating like a chain. And now since this one is named L, we can just go ahead, click armature and choose symmetrize, and that will create a duplicate of this with the R suffix for us. Now let's tab out. And in the armature viewport display, let's switch the display to stick. We don't need those large bones visible. And basically this is everything we need now to rig this. So let's rename this to tank, and we don't need to rename this. And now let's select the tank body, hold Shift, select the armature and press Ctrl P, and we'll parent this as armature deform with empty groups. So now if we select the vehicle, you can see in the object data properties, there are vertex groups created with the names of these bones. So currently, if you move the armature, you can see the tank is moving because it's parented. But if you will move this in pose mode, nothing will happen. So let's select the tank, tab into the edit mode. And first of all, let's press 1 for vertex select, click away to deselect everything. And now let's hit L, hovering over the track here. And as we go along, we can hit L to select linked. And now let's find tracks here and hit assign. Let's press H to hide this. And we can press L hovering here, select these parts with the body and assign this to body. And now let's press H to hide so it doesn't get in the way. And let's do the same thing here for the turret parts, and let's hit assign. And now let's press H. Now select the left cannon and assign. And basically now just press A to select all and assign the right cannon. And now press Alt H to unhide everything. And if we now tab out, select the armature and go into pose mode. So you can either select the pose mode here, or you can hit Ctrl and Tab. Now you're able to separately move this, to move the turret and rotate it, and of course move these cannons however you like. And this is what I will use for the animation, and this is always the easiest way to transfer your animation from a software like Blender to a game engine. Every game engine understands bones and vertex groups, and this should work seamlessly, whether you want to bring this to Unreal Engine, Godot, Unity, or even online engines like Spline. So let's do some animation first. I will expand this right here, and I will set this to something like 60 frames. This will be a very short animation. And first thing I want to do is to do like an idle animation. So this will be very stylized. Imagine in the game you have a tank. It kind of just sits around and puffs, you know, in place. So I want to create like up and down animation, but I won't do this manually, creating all those keyframes. Let's press N for the side panel, and let's right click and create single keyframe on Z location. And now we'll hit Ctrl and Tab here in the timeline view, and we get to graph editor. So let's now expand this, and you can see there's the body and there's Z location. And we can go in the modifiers right here. If you don't see this part, press N, same as with the viewport. And let's add built-in function, and we can leave this at sign, and let's do additive. And now we'll just place with the amplitude and phase. So let's do something really small like 0.05 and see how this moves. This is still quite a lot, so let's do 0.025. I think they'll be fine, but it goes a little bit hectic. If you want to better see this curve, you can hold Control and now drag with the middle mouse button up and down to kind of zoom in on this. And now if you change the phase multiplier, you will see how many of these movements you get. Now let's try to increase this a little bit, something like this. And now we'll go ahead, click channel and bake the animation, because this is another thing you need to do. Let's click it. That will basically translate this procedural animation to keyframe on every single frame, because your engine wouldn't be able to recognize your procedural animation from Blender probably. So this is what you need to do. And now to simplify things, let's press T and change the keyframe to linear interpolation, so we don't need those handles since we got keyframes on every single frame. And now we just need to optimize this a little bit. So I can see that these two are probably the ones I need to connect in the beginning and end. So let's select these two, press X and delete keyframes. And now we'll just select everything, go here with the cursor and change this to 2D cursor. And now you can press S then X and just scale this out frame by frame. It looks fine, something like this. Make sure you are careful with the shape of the animation on other places. Sometimes you might need to move things around a little bit. And now if you play this back, you can see this should loop very nicely. It's baked in, it's on the bone right here. And what we can do right here is to go into the dope sheet and switch this to action editor. And we have the tank animation slot right here, and we can name our action. Let's say this is the idle animation. And now basically we'll just hit the fake user to protect this animation in case you would close the Blender file. And you can just duplicate this and rename to fire. And now we can just press A to select all, press X and delete keyframes. And now there's no animation happening here on this bone, but if you switch this back to idle, your animation is back. It's saved for you in these animation slots. So let's go to fire animation, let's go to frame 1. And what I want to do here is to rotate the turret a little bit and shoot from those cannons. So let's go back to timeline and let's switch the rotation from quaternion to XYZ Euler. And now let's right click on a Z rotation and insert single keyframe, and let's move like 10 frames and modify this just like that. right click and insert single keyframe, and now we can select this one in the front, press Shift D, then X, and duplicate it on the other side like this. Now this is what we have here. We'll adjust this a little bit later. Maybe we'll need some in-between keyframes as well, and this is probably too hectic, so let's select this frame, press Shift D, and duplicate that right here, and let's move this one out a little bit like this. So now we have some space where turret stops and we are able to shoot from those cannons. We can even make this a little bit longer like this. And now let's select this cannon bone, and on the frame 10 it will start shooting. So now I'll go ahead and create single keyframe on y-axis and move like 5 frames, and let's modify the value here. It will go back here like this, right click and insert single keyframe, and then let's do the same thing like before. Let's select the first one, press Shift D, and duplicate it here. So this is the movement we get. Now before I transfer this to the second one, let's refine our animation. So first of all, let's select this turret bone again and Control Tab here to view the animation graph, and we can press A to select all and period on a numpad to focus on our animation, or you can use that Control and middle mouse button scroll. And now let's make this steeper. So in the beginning I want this to rotate, you know, with a little bit more energy in the beginning like this, and then it shouldn't just stop in place, it should be like more fluid. So we can try to move this around like this, for example, and maybe a little bit away. Okay, maybe bring it closer here. And now let's do the same thing here. Let's focus on our animation, and again we'll make this steeper here, and this can go out a little bit longer and do something like this. And now let's go back to the timeline view, and let's just select all of these keyframes, press Ctrl C, and now select this bone right here, go to the frame 10, and now let's create an empty keyframe here. So right click and insert single keyframe on y-axis, and now let's press Ctrl and V to paste our animation. So now both of these are doing the same thing, but we can now press G and just move this 5 frames, so there will be an offset for these. So this is the final animation. Now before we move on and export this, I want to put some texture on it, because this is not as straightforward as texturing in Blender, where you can use, you know, multiple material slots and complex node setups, because most of the time you will need to bake your texture effort to something more simple that you can be exported into the game engine, and I want to show you how to do that. So I will first do some quick texturing using procedural add-on Fluent Materializer. This is a paid add-on and I use it a lot, and I'm in no way affiliated with the add-on maker. I just use it a lot, and it will be much quicker to show you how to quickly create that kind of texture. And of course then you can decide whether you want to go for the add-on or you want to use some different means of creating your textures, whether it's procedural or from different texture maps, but the lesson here will be about baking the texture and exporting it along with the FBX to the game engine. So let's just select our tank and let's create a new material here, and I will call this tank, and I will switch this to node editor, the shader editor, all like this. And then the Fluent Materializer, you can see the bookmark right here. It has some library. You might need to switch it back and forth a little bit. You can see there's a library of different grunge maps here, and these are procedurally generated by the add-on, but you can just go ahead and basically download any grunge maps out there, whether they're free or paid, and use that black and white texture to do the same thing that I will be doing right here. So first of all, let me just add it here, and of course we can use the result and plug it into the surface so we can see the preview. And I will go ahead and switch this to material preview, and now you can see how the texture looks like. And then I have some values that I can tweak to make this look better. So I will reduce the scale so we get something like this really strong grungy effect. And then there's another thing that I use quite often with the add-on, and that's when you press F, you get this pie menu, and they have this perfect worn out wizard that basically allows you to quickly, mask out edges and then maybe adjust them a little bit like this. And now let's press Shift A here, and I will add a mix color node, and let's plug this back and let's find some suitable color for the tank. Something like this, some desert camo will look great. And then I will just press Ctrl C hovering here and paste it into the A color and into the B color as well. And then the B color I will modify and make it a little bit darker and maybe shift on the hue a little bit. And then you can just plug this result of the grunge into the factor, and here you plug this into the color and you basically mask it out with this grunge. So no matter if you have this procedural grunge or you are using the black and white image with some pre-made grunge, when you connect it here into the factor, the effect would be the same. Of course, with the image texture you might need to unwrap the tank a little bit, which we'll need to do anyway. So I will just select it here, tab into the edit mode, and we can expand one window here and show the UVs. And let's just press U here and choose Smart UV Project. That'll be the fastest way, maybe not the most precise, but for this kind of tutorial, definitely the fastest. And then if you slap your black and white texture on this should work in a very similar way. And yeah, that's for the grunge. And now I want to create those worn out edges. So I will basically create another mix color node. So let's press Shift A and again color and mix color. And I want to plug this here and our worn out edges mask right here into the factor. And if you want to know how to create similar kind of edges, I did a tutorial on procedural texturing and you will find the link in the description. So if you want to make this material setup yourself without any kind of add-on, there's a tutorial for that as well. So let me just plug this here into the color. Let me tab out of the edit mode. Let's wait for the shader to compile, and you can see now we have something like this here. And now basically we can adjust the color a little bit there. And basically that's all I wanted to do. Maybe let's give it a little bit of a hue like this. Okay, so we have some worn out effects there. And then I want to make this bottom part black, so I will need another material slot there with new material, and I will just make it black with full roughness. Tab into the edit mode, click away, and then press L to select these parts that I want to make black. Basically that's it probably. And then assign this material, and we'll bake all of this into a single texture. So these material slots are only temporary. So now in the tank texture, let's create a new image texture. Let's press Shift A, let's go texture and image, and we'll create a new one. And I think 2K will be fine, so let's do 248, 2048 here. And with the black color, let's hit new image. And this is now blank texture, and you can see the UV map overlay on it. So now we'll be just baking this result on our image. So let's go to the render settings and let's switch this to cycles. I will switch GPU and I will enable the noising. And now down here, if I scroll down, there's a bake section, and you can see you can bake combined channels, or you can separately bake roughness and normals. But what I really want is just the color information from this texture. So I will switch the combined to diffuse and then disable the light contributions and just leave the color on. And now I should be able to just click bake. Make sure this is selected. You need to have this white frame around your node so the Blender knows which texture slot it should be baking in. And now I will just hit bake. And now you can see the result right here. All this procedural stuff that we made with the add-on is now baked into the texture. So again, this was not about how to create this particular effect with this grunge, whether it's with using the add-on or not. This is about this process where you create a texture slot, and whatever you have here, you UV map it, and then you bake your color results or whatever channel you want to bake into the texture if you want the full PBR setup. So now the next thing, because you can see there are some empty spaces for the tracks, because when baking, I did this with this tank material. So now I will just select this, press Ctrl C, select the other material, and just press Ctrl V and paste it here. So we have the same image loaded right there. And now let me go back to those bake settings and let me hit this again. And you will see now additionally we baked in some black color on those tracks. So you can have multiple material slots on multiple parts of your vehicle, and then gradually you can go on and basically bake in whatever details you want. And now when you're finished with your texture, you just hover here, press Alt S to save your texture. I will call this tank and save. And now basically we need to remove those materials, but if you want to repeat this process later, I suggest you hit fake user icon here, so the material doesn't get deleted when you remove it from your vehicle. So let's just remove all of those, and let's press Ctrl C again to copy this image, and let's remove all the materials and create a new one. Let's call this tank bake, and I'll just press Ctrl V here and plug the color. And now we are using just the baked image texture here. I will increase the roughness to full, and now we're basically finished with our model. If you play back, it's still animated, it still uses the armature animation, and now we can export this as FBX. So let's just select all, and now if armature is orange and the tank is highlighted in yellow, we need to do this in the opposite way. So hold shift and select the armature. This needs to be highlighted yellow so it's active. And now let's go File, Export, and FBX. And here I will do a fun thing. I will switch the pad mode to copy and click this icon right here. You can see we can embed texture into the FBX binary file. So let's do that, and let's limit this to selected objects only. And we of course want to include the animation. We don't need the strips. We want to bake all actions. Now I'll just name my file here and hit Export FBX. And now if you open this file in the Windows 3D viewer, you can see we have the full 3D model exported with the animation, even with the embed texture right from that one file. And you can even go ahead and basically switch your animation. So this is the basic game asset workflow. This is how you create your animation, this is how you bake your textures, and this is how you get everything into a single FBX file and export it for game engines. And you can not only preview it Windows like this, but you can just drag and drop it into any game engine or any online real-time engine such as Spline, where I can just take the FBX file, drop it right here, and I have the tank. Of course, not all engines will import your textures right away, so you will probably need to do your own. And you can see in the material we have this image, so I can just load it up here. And then of course you have your animation slots here, and you can click through them and preview them. And this is right here in your online spline editor right from the Blender. Works like a charm. And this is the way how it would work both in Unity, Unreal Engine, Godot, whatever have you, though the material creation might be different for each of those software. So that's it from me, a quick game asset tutorial, and I really hope you enjoyed this one. And if you did, please leave a like, leave a comment, and if you want to learn more like this in the future, hit that subscribe. Thank you all for watching and have a wonderful day.